I wonder what Alex's toast would have sounded like had he been in the same room as the monstrous regiment of women rather than safely ensconced behind a screen. But to be fair, the speech wasn't too cutting. It was mostly just another example of a man taking up all the air with pomposity and pretension. As is a lot of this Burns supper tradition, it has to be said, and certainly in my view and in the view of most Catholics around the country, including the handful of Catholics in Ayrshire, of which I am one. We see these Burns traditions as misogynistic, Masonic, and orange, to be honest. And that's probably why Alex took relish in preparing his toast. He thought he'd finally been accepted in the man's world of bigotry. But the radical Burns night also gives us the opportunity to talk about Burns' radical writings, the forgotten histories and hidden voices of other poets, and our current radical surroundings. Alex did justice to the latter, in particular in his toast to our key workers, the majority of whom formed that monstrous regiment of women, or are part of the Merry Muses, as Burns called them. I'd like to continue the theme of the hidden voices of women and why they are so hidden, though. So in the words of Isabel Pagan from Muirkirk in Ayrshire, she wrote in the 1800s on Burns and Ramsay, and she wrote in this deferential way that women use, comparing her natural skill to that of the learned Burns. Now Burns and Ramsay both are deed, although I cannot them succeed. Yet here I'll try my natural skill, and hope you will not take it ill. You know their learning wasna small, and mine is next to none at all. Theirs must be brighter far than mine, because I am much on the decline. I hope the public will excuse what I have done hereby the muse. Oh. As different men are of different minds, my metre is of different kinds. I just want to speak a bit about Suki, whose idea this extravaganza was, and who's working hard behind the scenes, obviously, along with a lot of other women like Jenny and Frances and Karina. But Suki's also involved in another online project called the Worker Stories Project. And it's a collection of stories and poems, videos, songs from people all over the country, from all over Scotland, talking about their experience of the pandemic. You can get it online on Facebook and Twitter. It's on the Contour website as well. But I'd just like to give a mention to those women who've raised their creativity and raised their voices and contributing to the Worker Story Project. To Hazel Stevens, Claire Peden, Helen McGill, Kim McFarland, Vicky, Pam, Dee Davey, Claire Grayland, Claudia and Angela Armstrong, to name a few. There are nurses, there are posties, they're working from home, there are mothers and our teachers. And it would have been a difficult thing for them to do in raising their voices, because women fear scrutiny. Working class people fear scrutiny, Black people fear scrutiny, and everyone who's not been bred to put themselves out there fears scrutiny. As Audre Lorde said, poetry is not a luxury. She writes, for each of us as women, there is a dark place within where hidden and growing our true spirit rises, beautiful and tough as chestnut, stanchions against our nightmare of weakness and of impotence. Lorde continues, as we learn to bear the intimacy of scrutiny and to flourish within it, as we learn to use the products of that scrutiny for power within our living, those fears which rule our lives and form our silences begin to lose their control over us. And that's why it's so important we have women and working class women's voices written, recorded, and remembered. And I'm pleased that the Worker Stories Project will be archived and kept for an exhibition one day. So well done to all those who are putting the hard work into pulling that together. But now we get on to the ubiquitous part of the reply from the lassies on what Burns thought about women. Did he see them as social and intellectual equals, as he claimed to in the rights of women? Did he fetishise them? Did he use them for his career? And how much child support did he actually owe now? But really, who cares? What's more interesting is the honesty he had about men and how contemporary his writings are on men's weaknesses. In his poem, The Fornicator, he says, ye jovial boys who love the joys, the blissful joys of lovers, ye dare avow with dauntless brow when thy bonny lass discovers. Pray draw near and lend an ear and welcome in a prater. for I've lately been on quarantine, a proven fornicator. Burns excuses this fornication for men and calls on women's empathy and reason to expunge these apparently innate weaknesses of men. In another poem he writes, "Let not women e'er complain of inconstancy in love. Let not women e'er complain, fickle man is apt to rove. Look abroad through nature's range, nature's mighty laws change. Ladies, would it not seem strange, man should then a monster prove? Mark the winds and mark the skies, oceans ebb and oceans flow. Sun and moon but set to rise, round and round the seasons go. Why then ask of silly man to oppose great nature's plan? We'll be constant while we can. You can be no more, you know." Well, women, is that good enough? I doubt it very much. And we know it's not in the past. The amazing thing about Burns is that a farmer from Ayrshire could write that which speaks to the hearts and minds of those centuries later. The men who he wrote about in the 1700s are, unfortunately though, too often the same men as we see before us today, warts and all. But as we know, a man's a man for all that. Their tinsel show and all that. The honest man, though earthly poor, is king o' men for all that. And that's what's peculiar about Burns. He managed to weave a timeless story which provides consistency in explaining the fragility of man and woman, an idea and an ideal which chimes strongly today, a convincing lie, perhaps. We're all complicated, and of course, if only we could see ourselves as others see us, what a better predicament we would be in then. And perhaps we women are simply jealous of men's ability to get away with all the hochmayandy and boozing and carousing and the fighting, instead of being cornered into the adage of the nagging, bitching woman. We'd rather be Tam than Kate. It's astonishing, though, that this doesn't stop us enjoying men's company, as Alex, and Cian and the other performers tonight are testament to. And that's nothing new, as Jean Adam from Greenock testified herself to this in her 1700s poem, There's Nae Luck About the House. She said, "There's nae luck about the house, there's nae luck of a'. There's little pleasure in the house when our good man's awa'." It's been a difficult year for everyone, and we need to rebuild our society now more than ever. So let's not celebrate the smashing of the glass ceiling if it does nothing to raise us from the sticky floor. Instead, let's celebrate those of us who are simply surviving one day to the next, our babies and children and teenagers and mums and grannies. And yes, to celebrate the men too, who don't fit the stereotype, who give their time freely to others, who make our work possible and our life that little bit noisier. I'll finish this reply to the lassies in the words again of Audre Lorde, in recognising that the workers' fight is the women's fight, is the fight of Black liberation for the emancipation of all, something which we like to hope Burns agreed with, although that is still up for dispute. Who said it was simple? There are so many roots to the tree of anger that sometimes the branches shatter before they bear. Sitting in the decks, the women rally before they march, discussing the problematic girls they hire to make them free. An almost white counterman passes, a waiting brother to serve them first, and the ladies neither reject nor rejoice in the slightest pleasures of their slavery. But I, who am bound by my mirror, as well my bed, see causes in colour as well as sex, and sit here wondering which me will survive all these liberations. So, to us all, and to air, wham near a tune surpasses for honest men and bonny lasses. Cheers.